Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
My town is run by a tribe of homeless people. I'm not kidding. There's a feral family that has been homeless here since the Civil War. Them and their offspring all chose to be homeless, and they have hundreds of offspring who collectively managed to get each other jobs at the municipal bureaucracy. And apparently 20% of the taxpayer money here is being funneled directly towards their elder and 108 old blind illiterate man who lives in the sewers. If you complain about this in public, they will find out and make you disappear. So most people go on about their lives. How do I fix this?
Bump, tell us more, OP.
Apparently in the 1950s, there was a really bad strain of pneumonia, which wiped out half of the clan. And from 1950 to 1965, there were 40-plus child disappearances in the region, which is extremely high for a remote rural part of the country. Apparently, it's suspected that they were trafficked into the family to rebuild their population, but you can't mention this in public.
This story keeps getting crazier. Why would they choose to be homeless if they are smart enough to pull all this off?
A mix. The few that are incorporated into society live in shacks and apartments in parts of the county near the woods. The rest live in either the sewers, the woods, or the streets.
They're likely descended from travelers and gypsies. We have the same types here. It's a cultural thing. They see non-nomadic people outside their clan as diseased and cursed. They don't like authority.
Do something that will bring them all to one area, like write a note that says "I know" in essence, then just bait them on top of a bomb, fertilizer, etc., etc. If they're so deep into bad doings themselves, they can't go to police for help.
It sounds like they might be the police or at least own them, from the sewers.
There was a case where 4 of them stormed a convenience store and just completely lit the place up, shooting at everyone and just stealing all the snacks and money they could grab. An off-duty cop was out getting his car filled when they come running out. He shoots one of them dead. There was no investigation. Cop was immediately discharged. Nothing ever published in the paper. Only know it happened because I know the guy who works at the gas station it happened at. They're not allowed to talk to the press about it.
All right, OP, even if this is bait, I'll bite. What has been your most direct interactions with this family? Any notable individuals stand out besides the blind sewer dude?
For the average person, you don't have a lot of direct contact. You'll see groups of them occasionally drinking next to an abandoned mill or on the side of a highway. But I was taught since I was a kid not to look at them for too long. One notable person is a midget who was responsible for a string of like 30 robberies over a single summer. He would always target the same 3 places: Chinese restaurant, laundromat, and antique shop over and over again, and always make it away, despite being extremely identifiable. Never was caught or arrested, and it never happened again after that one summer.
So where do they go after work? Just sleep in a woods?
Like I said, in the woods, underground. Occasionally, if they've been drinking, they'll just sleep wherever they passed out.
Okay, it sounds like this old family who have been involved in the town forever are just literally getting a free pass at anything they do. So you need to instigate a situation where only they are affected, and the rest of you normal folks are fine. I would say the plague, but that sounds kind of risky. Same with some health crisis, like trying to give them fleas or the plague. That will most likely affect them and not you, but I don't know if this is enough. Unironically, I think you need to go public with this, like how they did with Welcome to Lee documentary. Or try and get a popular event to visit you, like a carnival or a politician or even Pitbull. Once people from outside the town see what is going on, this will get funky and shake up.
Don't talk about your job. Don't talk about your friends. Don't talk about your family, which side of town you live, how old you are. Consider all the ways you describe things in such a way that you give nothing to anyone as to who you are. Don't post at the same time of day. Don't type in ways that match your speech patterns, and shut the fuck up about anything you like to do, eat, or people you prefer.
People who seem homeless are often elder practitioners of the occult who have gone insane, but many are still revered or served by members of the Illuminati, or whatever you call it. Many cases such as yours, but on a much larger scale, Op.
What town, OP?
Montrose, Iowa.
My city had a chief financial officer who gamed the system to work only 6 months every year, and then winter on disability for 6 months in Florida. He claimed that he had a medical condition which prevented him working longer than 6 months every year, and thus he demanded, and received, an accommodation where he could work 6 months and then take 6 months off. Because this accommodation was allegedly based on a medical condition, the public was not allowed to know exactly what this mysterious medical condition was. Moreover, the public was not allowed to know why the only accommodation was to allow the guy to go on disability for 6 months every year. The guy was a hysteric sociopath, and so the media was afraid of questioning his disability lest he attack them as being against the disabled.
Sociopaths are gifted manipulators. I have a tenant like that, son of a consul, able to phone the cops to get a free ride. Not every day, but I saw him doing it twice.
Any cults in Colorado? Be me back in 2016. Turning 23, decided to take a trip from Central Texas to Colorado Springs, where my uncle lives, for my birthday, October 31st. My friend Sam and I set out for Colorado on the 25th and got there on the 26th. Spend the first 4 days doing touristy shit, going to head shops in Denver, Garden of the Gods and Pikes Peak in that order. So the night before Halloween arrived, we were sitting in my uncle's backyard around a fire pit smoking. Mention that I haven't been camping in a while, and my friend jumps at the opportunity and immediately starts planning a camp out for the next night. Halloween arrives and we start packing for a camping trip, throw in some blankets, a tent, and some cooking supplies and flashlights. I borrowed some bear mace from my uncle and we headed out towards White River National Forest, specifically Henry Mountain. No joke, that gave me chills just typing it. We finally got up the mountain around 11 a.m. Campsite set up by 12 p.m. with a rock fire pit in the middle surrounded by 2 logs and my tent facing away from the mountain and forest. Fast forward nighttime, I don't remember what time. We had been sitting, smoking and talking since dusk. Starts to get too cold for a Texan's blood and we go to the tent to warm up. Wake up sometime later in the dark, no longer high and freezing my balls off. Realize we packed like idiots and are thoroughly unprepared for a night on the top of a mountain. Wake Sam and say, let's go to the Forerunner and sleep back there. Agrees in less than a second. I unzip the tent and take a knee to tie my boots while my friend starts gathering up the blankets and pillows. I looked at the fire pit we had made, but it looked messed up, like someone put an M80 in the ashes and half of the rocks from the pit were gone with no trace. I shrug it off. I feel asleep first, so he probably did it while I was sleeping. Running to the Forerunner from the cold, I threw in the blankets and pillows. Sam jumped in and I closed the hatch. An hour later, my friend is snoring and I feel wide awake. I can't get the fire pit out of my head. It was so uncharacteristic of him, he wouldn't mess with the fire pit if we spent the afternoon making it. I eventually give up and decided to have a smoke, so I moved to the driver's seat by just crawling from the back. I take a look around, and it's nothing but darkness. It was like my windshield had become a portal to the abyss. I put headphones in my right ear and grabbed my pipe to start loading it when I heard something. Paused the music and leaned forward, using my arm against the door to steady myself. I was listening for anything out of the norm, and my friend's snoring didn't help, so I pushed his head and he kinda woke up. I heard him ask if I was smoking. I hand him the pipe and say, "Shut the hell up and listen." Suddenly I heard a click. Sam had heard it too. I could see the reaction on his face. I turned back to look and put my arm back against the door. Then I felt it in my right arm. A slight vibration in the door every time I heard a click, then it hit me someone was trying to open my door. Immediately, a million thoughts run through my head. In a second, the first one was fuck. Feel it happen 2 more times, and just sort of watch my door. In the span of 5 seconds, right after the second pull, the door behind me was pulled, then the hatch, then the back right, and finally the passenger's side door. I was shocked and speechless like never before. I had seen nothing, and it happened so fast. I remember this cold feeling in the pit of my stomach as I looked at the passenger window. As I was looking at the window, all of them were tinted practically black, so I couldn't see anything, but I heard 3 small but definite taps. That's fucking enough, I said out loud. I turned to my friend and told him to hand me the keys. As I did, they realized we were in the car, not the tent. Flick on the headlights and felt my hope die a little. 20+ people in the forest and around our tent. One of them was pouring gas on our tent. A few others were pulling up the tent spikes. For a second, they were frozen like deer in the headlights, and I wondered how long they watched us for. Throw my car in reverse and go down the mountain so fast that somewhere along the way, I broke the exhaust on my 4Runner. On the way down, I realized they were going to light the tent on fire and drag it off the cliff. Spoke to the police, but they found nothing, not even our tent and cooking shit. Had my uncle weld my exhaust, and I left for Texas that afternoon. Haven't been back to cursed Colorado since.
Colorado Anon here. There are definitely some weird New Age types wandering about. We usually bring guns with us on our camping trips in case of nutjob type shit like this. One of our campsites in Nederland is notorious for some guy going on a stabbing rampage and killing some campers before my time.
Does anyone know what programs or cults were active in 29 Palms in the 70s? My dad grew up in 29 Palms with a brother and a single mom who was in the Air Force. They both ended up living in Utah, where they met my mom and had me. After my dad died when I was a child, my grandma started abusing me. I have shattered memories of the basement of where I was abused. My dad died when I was very young, and what is interesting is that his death was unexplainable. Up until a few months ago, I was under the impression that he died of a brain aneurysm. I'm in my 20s now, and have lived on my own since I was 18. I went no contact with my mom because she is an abusive narcissist, but I talked to her once a few months ago. She said, "I've told you this countless times. Your father didn't die from a brain aneurysm. The doctors couldn't explain why his brain hemorrhage. They never found evidence of an aneurysm. I swear my mom never told me this before." Last year, my mom had me admitted against my will to a psych hospital after I was attacked. I think this was all a setup now. The hospital is owned by the government, and most of the patients were in the military. In fact, I was the only patient that wasn't in the military or a veteran. My mom brought me there against my will 4 times, and they injected me with drugs that drove me crazy all year. I finally managed to get away for the past few months. My roommates told me that a man in a suit asked where I was and had been stalking the house. My psychiatrist, from the hospital, is why I'm interested in 29 Palms. His grandfather died in 29 Palms when my dad was a teenager. Also, almost all his immediate family works at NASA. He is the only one in mental health. Does anyone know of any programs or cults my grandma and father could have gotten involved with in the 70s in 29 Palms? My ancestry, on my dad's side, is easy to trace because I have an original name. I'm from England, Germany, and France, but mostly France. I tracked to a high Baroness family back into the 16th century.
If anyone is interested in finding out how to get into a religious sect/group or cult, then please feel free to ask someone who has overcome many threats while filming/doing documentaries over multiple cults in Michigan. If you have any questions on equipment, the best piece of surveillance equipment I could recommend would be a button cam. Pic related, I have the very same model.
Which has been your most dangerous encounter?
My most dangerous encounter wasn't even life-threatening, to be honest. But I did receive a few good hits to the noggin. I was with my sister's boyfriend, who tried initiating me into this broken form of nihilism cult they had going on. He had all his buddies invest into a paper street house kind of apartment, where they would live under one roof and one philosophy. When I had gotten into a debate with my future brother-in-law about keeping my niece out of his insane, anti-consumerist-based lifestyle, he and his friends chased me out the house. By the time I made it out the door already, one of the cowards hit me in the back of my head. Whether it was at the command of my future brother-in-law, I don't know and don't care. We have forgiven each other, and he was mature enough to take my advice. My niece stays with my sister, while her crazy father lives with the few remaining members of his super special secret fight club. Posers, man.
Which has been the most interesting cult you have infiltrated?
Now this is an interesting question, as interesting could relate to many aspects in a cult. Some cults members I've recorded acted like contributing citizens of society when outside their cult dens. Funny thing is, some of these cult members had mind-blowingly contradictory practices, though such as disturbingly violent ritual and inane ideals even a child wouldn't be stupid enough to swallow. Then there was a cult that I've documented that acted crazy in broad daylight, almost begging others on a street in Grand Rapids to join their odd organization. What is so fascinating is that when I entertained them and got inside their group cabin, they acted like high-class members of America, perfectly normal people just wanting to enlighten others in their spiritual cause. But to answer your question, the most interesting cult I would say I've investigated was this group of teens who planned on digging up haunted and infamous bodies at a place called Oak Hill Cemetery at Coldwater, Michigan. These rowdy group of kids did things I refuse to forgive. There is a point to which one has to lay down their fun and games in order to give respect and commemoration to spirits of past lives. Have I ever felt like I actually want to join one of the cults I have infiltrated? When I was young and naive, yes. I was a social outcast when I first started my Cult Watch group, and was sexually repressed as well. I went out of my way to find groups at first, not in hopes of exposing them to the general public, but to engage in devious activities that would fill my most inner desires. But that was a long time ago.
I still tell people to this day that the 12-step rehab I went to is a religious cult, including daily guilt sessions both in private and also in front of a group of people who are also completely guilt-tripped, daily prayers to God, and some other things that I forgot. Literally, you have to name every bad thing you ever done in your entire life, including before you were even using, and feel like total shit for it. When my counselor told me to get on my hands and knees, hold hands with him and pray to God, or my higher power, to cure me of alcoholism, that's when I plotted my escape, and luckily it worked. Been sober for like a year and a half now from alternative therapies, but holy fucking shit. Some high priests of AA are completely insane. Cult members =, AANA folk guru =, Bill Wilson, plus Dr. Bob. There's actually a shitload of info about this on orange-papers.org, so check that shit out. It's all 100% completely fucking true.
I'm glad to hear you escaped with valuable knowledge, friend. Have you ever planned on joining back to gain validity? Like more information to add to the cause? Or have they caught on to your suspicions?
Never. If they were to know that I changed my entire thinking, behavior, coping skills, etc., and got sober without them, they call you a dry drunk, which is a name for someone getting sober without AA or NA. Yeah, I'm serious. Some high priests in my group would often accuse others of being a dry drunk to get the rest of the group against them. Then it's more confession sessions, prayer, guilt tripping, etc. I only spent like 15 days inpatient back in 2012, but holy shit. The thought of drinking and doing drugs again and having to go back there is more of a reason not to do them. It's that bad. Their enemies are alternative therapies since they literally believe the only way to sobriety is through AA. The guy that owns Orange Papers gets harassed by them all the fucking time, to the point where he had to personally allow people into the website's forum.
Here is a group that got posted a long time ago in a past thread. I've been highly interested in finding these people someday, as I have never studied an indigenous population before. 1. Where is your cult based? The Melanesian Islands 2. What does your cult go by? The cult of the Douk Douk. 3. What is the central belief or mission of your cult? Becoming a Douk Douk. The Douk Douk is a spirit of punishment in the Melanesian culture. Becoming a Douk Douk requires the mask of a Douk Douk. You need to forget about everything you know, subtract yourself from the world, listen to your inner voice, that is the voice of the Douk Douk, telling you who to punish in his name and how. During the day, you're just yourself, but when the night comes, you gather with other Douk Douks to your hiding place, where you hide your mask, put it on, and return to punish the sinners. The fact that you are a Douk Douk is to remain a secret to anyone but a Douk Douk, so no one can identify you. which is why you wear a mask, but obviously none of you can identify me. 4. What would we call your members? Douk Douks. 5. What would your members call you? What are you to them? Douk Douk. I'm simply their equal. 6. What pieces of film, books, music, or whatever media would your cult recommend? None. Information is scarce. All you'll find on the internet is information on the Douk Douk knife, which is for the most part unrelated. 7. Does your cult have any enemies? Anyone that's not part of it? 8. What should /x/ expect of your cult if it should become powerful? Get punished for having lied on the internet. 9. What words do you have for anyone interested in your cult? It's not a joke, it's an actual cult. If you want to join, get on a plane to the Melanesian Islands and ask one of the natives for the whereabouts of Douk Douks. 10. Does your cult have any contact info in case one wants to join or has questions? No. Douk Douks gather in groups to pass down their knowledge, but have no leader. They are found in Melanesian Islands and gather at night far from villages.
Will you ever publish or at least blog, or make your reports and work available? I'm approaching my 30s soon. I know it's physically possible for me to continue this hobby of mine till the day I die. But really, I am getting far too old and boring to pursue this as a career. I have many inspirational figures that have tried to make a living doing what I do, selling their evidence to authority figures, news stations, /publishers, you name it. But if I was to come out with the information I have, I would most likely be investigated by authorities myself and risk imprisonment. I will not lie. I have documented myself trespassing on private property and even stealing suspicious items from cult members' homes. I have not done anything illegal for the purpose of greed, but to expose the truths of these cults I feel are dangerous to my neighboring communities. One wrong move for the sake of getting famous or to become a financial success may ironically make me infamous and keep me from good-paying jobs. I enjoy anonymity unless it is a necessity I trip on certain threads. I believe there is power in a whole, not an individual. If I was to make a blog of all my findings and noting how I obtained these answers, then I myself would slowly enter down the road of trying to become a personal success. I don't need that. Not yet, at least. After all, I'm approaching my 30s. I am ugly, unappealing, and not hip for the world we live in today. PewDiePie and Miley Cyrus is all the world cares about these days, so maintaining a cult watch site would just prove financially difficult. At least on 4chan, the domain is free to my use, and information is easily being spread. I am quite anonymous, even with the occasional trip friending. So, for now, all is well. No blogs, no releasing my videotapes, pictures. Not yet, at least. Maybe in a few years when I believe my work is complete. But for now, I just hope everyone enjoys what I have to offer at the moment. How do you manage your safety? Have any groups come after you when you have left? This is something I left out in my explaining of why I don't publicly post my findings. I had an acquaintance once. He was a young fellow just trying to find a purpose in the world. Like me, he delved into the world of cultism research. One week I noticed he stopped showing up to my little club. I started with people of a similar cause. Then the next week I asked one of our shared friends how he was doing, and if he decided this hobby was too much of a chore for him. The mutual friend mentioned he moved to another city. Out of nowhere, he just moved, without making a big deal out of it, or telling everyone within our group. To this day, I believe he was threatened by the suspicious cultish group I remember him investigating at the time. I believe that they instilled fear and terror to a point that he wanted out. Packing his bags, making sure no one knew where he would be going, he just left. I feel sorry him, that he was pushed to a point that he couldn't even trust his own friends. But then again, he chose this life. So now you know why I have yet to publish my findings. I won't lie. I am a coward. I value my life to the highest degree, and refuse to take excess chances. Yes, I put myself in danger whenever I go to strangers' houses, but that's nothing compared to exposing them whilst putting my name out there for them to track me down. So far, I've maintained my safety by exposing these groups in private. Many of your /TV/heroes like Anthony Bourdain and Vice News associates make themselves out to be heroes, since they are supposedly exposing harmful groups with their names published with each article. But for me, I'd rather not receive death threats and keep my name far from the spotlight as much as possible. Unlike my former group member and acquaintance, I value my home. I'd rather not fuck it off by having to skip town. Have you had any experiences with cultish political groups? Groups with aspects like controlling information and actions? I didn't come here to lie, nor did I come to make things bigger than they are. So I know you will be disappointed when I tell you this. I am sorry, Anon, but no. I have yet to investigate a cult that we would label as a majorly influential political group. I have been to the home of a lobbyist trying to make a marijuana business for himself, but other than that, all the other people cults I have visited are just people trying to advertise whatever truths they have for the world. But listen, Anon, it sounds like Illuminati is on the tip of your tongue. If you ask me, groups like the Illuminati groups do exist. Yes, I completely believe they do. But from what I've seen, cults do not have much power outside from what their most powerful members can do to their community. It is very rare that someone rich and influential joins one of these cultish groups I've been mentioning. If someone who is rich enough to rule the world follows under someone below them, then they must be completely insane or insecure. Try someone on /X/ who delves into Freemasonry. As you probably know already, those are the groups with powerful figureheads in their roster. Almost the groups I investigate are borderline indie and hidden to the world of the general public. Sorry to disappoint, but the world is more boring and straight-edge than you think. Don't believe in conspiracy nonsense. Oh, when I said controlling information and actions, I was talking in the sense of its members, not society. Oh, in that case, of course. 1 in every 4 cults I have observed seem to be possessing their members through fear tactics or the normal brainwashing. I only know this because 1 in every 4 cults tend to have a brave member answer my questions about how much freedom they truly possess whilst being an active member. This young woman, truly a kind-hearted soul, told me how her cult gurus would write letters in her name to her parents. She never told me why they do this for her, but strangely enough she mentioned how the cult figureheads would read her parents' letters aloud to her. I've come to the conclusion that she was either illiterate or that the cult leaders wished to project themselves as powerful and all-knowing to their lesser associates. The ones who control what goes in and out of the group will over time be associated with omnipotence by the lower members. There have been various forms of control that higher members, leaders of cults, have exhibited in my time of research. These range from what food and drink the lesser members are allowed to eat, to the very clothes they wear on a day-to-day basis. It sounds absurd, but it is very smart of the cult leaders to do this. In time, the lesser members will subconsciously associate the higher-ups as gods among men. Sadly, this is the case with most cults who end in mass self-end. Have you found any devotees to chaos, the Elder Ones, Relore? Have you found any cults worshipping gods from fiction, such as Warhammer's Chaos? My peers have claimed to the study of such fiction-based cults. As for me, I try to stay away from cults where I feel the leaders themselves only created it for the sake of boredom or fanatic dedication to one of their favorite characters. I took up this idea of only researching valid cults when one of the first cults I'd researched turned out to be basically a fan club for Tyler Durden, the prominent deuteragonist in Chuck Palahniuk's novel Fight Club. I think I mentioned it before in this thread. I went to my future brother-in-law's apartment that he and his friends pitched in to buy. Having become an obsessed fan of Brad Pitt's character, Tyler Durden, my sister's boyfriend, decided to follow the ideals of his favorite character. Being that my brother-in-law had quite the charismatic attitude back then, I wasn't surprised when he got all his best friends to invest in the apartment. But what surprised me, though, is how weak-minded he would be to pursue a fictional character's lifestyle. After he and his friends chased me out the door, I decided that such people were too immature and dumb to research. I was fascinated at the fact that people who are clearly intelligent sometimes wound up brainwashed by people of lesser knowledge than they. Aside from trying to pursue sexual cults at the time, I wanted to know how people of such genius could be so easily possessed by stupid people. So it is for that reason I only chase after cults who actually believe in something worthwhile. But anon, from what I've heard, there are countless cults based on worshipping fictional characters. From Godzilla to Hedorah, there are crazy shits who will worship them vibrantly.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.